right? So this can be hard. Good, honest, open communication is a hugely important thing to keeping, to being a better coach and letting people know where they stand. Number 3 is shaping behavior, and this is a really big one. This is a personal one for me. As coaches, when you think about it, we are probably the most, or one of the 2 most influential people in a kid's life outside of mom and dad. And we can shape their behavior, and we will shape their behavior either in a positive way or a negative way. And we have to be intentional about it. It's not your responsibility how a kid shows up on your team. That they're disrespectful, that they don't listen to you, that they disrespect their teammates, that they scream at referees. But it is your responsibility how they leave. And it is your responsibility how they act while they're on your team. And to do this, you can shape behavior. There's 5 steps to shaping behavior, and I think it's they're worth writing down, especially if you coach middle school and high school age kids, where you can really be this positive impact, and kids are so self-centered sometimes. So shape behavior. Number 1, you have to call behavior what it is. Right? This is our team standard. These are our core values. We value respect. So you have to always call it what it is. If you value effort, and Bo's the best player on my team, and he can give 80% and still be the best player, and I don't say anything to him until he drops below 80%, I've just told everyone else on the team that as long as you give me 85%, that's fine. Right? Even if he's still the best at 80, I have to say, no, we value 100% effort. And so when I see your level dropping, I'm going to hold you accountable for that. So we have to call behavior what it is. Number 2, when we have players acting in a way that's outside of our values, we have to help them see it through other people's eyes. Teenagers are very egocentric people. They don't look outside of themselves very often. And so one of the most important things we can do is say to a kid, how do you think that makes your teammates feel when you give up, when we give up a goal at the end of the game, when you put your head down? How do you think it makes me feel as your coach when you yell at the referee after we've talked about not doing that? How do you think it makes your parents feel when you treat them that way? And most kids have never thought about how their actions make other people feel. They only think about how their actions make them feel. And so what that leads to, then asking a kid, once you've said, you know what, I can see how that would make my teammates feel. Coach, I'm sorry, I never thought about how you feel when I give up. And so then you say to them, which is step 3, is that who you want to be? Is this who you want to be as a person? Is this who you want to be? And 9 out of 10 kids are going to say, no, that's not who I want to be. Some people aren't going to change. But 9 out of 10 will say, no, that's not who I want to be. And now here's this magic moment as a coach where we get to say, which is step 4, how can I help you change? How can I help you become the person that you now want to be? And this is a very powerful thing, because what that does is it gives the player ownership over the change. Coach, if you can do this for me, that would be great. If you have a kid who puts his head down every time things are going bad and does this, hey, who's the most important person in your life for you? My grandma, she just died, and man, she loved me and did so much for me. Fantastic. Write her initials on your toes of your shoes. And every time you put your head down, what are you going to see? Grandma's initials. And if that doesn't tell you to get your head up, then probably nothing's going to. So you have now given them ownership, and you've said, how can I help you change? And then when they do change, and when that new behavior exists, when you give up a late goal, and they usually give up, and they say, oh no, wait, I'm going to do something different here. Then you just let those kids know, look at who you've become. Look at this change. And that is how we positively shape behavior as coaches. This is how we lead kids. This is how we become better mentors for our kids. And it's one of the most powerful and most important things that we do. Way beyond developing college players or developing pro players. We're behavior shapers. And when people start saying, man, those Baton Rouge soccer kids, they're a different breed. And we know we have, every community has schools where say, yeah, the kids who go to that school, it's just different, right? They're just different. They work harder. They're more respectful. They're this, they're that. I get to travel all around the country and I get to meet so many different things, and these kids are different. There was something different about that place, about how the kids on campus greeted me versus the other one where they put their head down and walk by. So be a behavior shaper. Next one. Any questions on that one? That's important. Next one, be a better teacher. I want to do a little demonstration here, and I need a volunteer. All right, perfect. You can actually just sit there. So what I'd like you to do is on the table, you're just going to tap out a song that you think everyone will know. And if you guys guess what song he's playing, just raise your hand. That's all. Don't yell it out. Just raise your hand. And he's going to play a song, any song you want. Anyone? It's getting frustrating. All right, what was the song?
Amazing Grace.
Amazing Grace. All right. Try I did this one for Coach.
Oh, you wanted a classic rock song?
Amazing. It's rated men.
I think you need another volunteer.
I had this coach once, this Greek guy, and he was like on the table, he was like, and everyone in the room, there's like 150 coaches, they're like, oh, what is it? It's techno, man. So, as you're tapping out the song, what are you hearing in your head?
Hearing the music.
Yeah, you're hearing the music, you're hearing the song. And what are you guys hearing? You're hearing tapping on the table. Well, guess what? This is teaching. This is teaching and learning. One of the things I hear all the time from coaches on the weekend watching them coach games is, but we went over this in practice. Well, just because you taught it doesn't mean they learned it. And when we're teaching something very difficult, like the sport of soccer, we're hearing the melody in our head. We know what a 4-3-3 looks like. We know what that pass is supposed to look like. We know how you're supposed to play left back and how you're supposed to move. But the kids that you're teaching it are hearing you banging on the table. Until you teach it better, until you teach it more, and until you get the point across. Now this little exercise, this tappers and listeners, it was actually a Stanford PhD study by a woman named Elizabeth Newton. And she brought in pairs of people, one to tap out the song, the other one to listen. And the interesting part of it was that she asked the tappers, what percentage of songs do you think people will get? And they said about 40-50%. And the actual number was 2%. So when you think about when you're teaching difficult concepts, about 2% of your kids are getting it. Until you teach it more, until you teach it better. And so we have to become better teachers. You have to become more effective teachers. And this is one of the most important things that we can do. Because just because we taught it doesn't mean they learned it. And one of the hardest things to do, once you know something, is to remember what it was like not to know it. One of the ways that we can become better teachers in the game of soccer is to make our activities and make our practices and make everything we do look more like the game. It has to look like the game. Now, if I brought one of you up here and we just stood here and we passed the ball back and forth 1,000 times, what am I teaching? What am I teaching? Am I teaching a technique that I'm going to use in a game? Realistically?
Using the stationary passing.
Teaching that. How many stationary passes will you hit in a game? 0. Right? I love kids, they show up before practice and they start, concussion practice, right? Where they all just put the ball on top of the box and they start shooting. right?
That's what we call it, actually.
Touching practice.
Yeah, right.
Right.
We've mandated no shooting before practice.
Exactly, which I think is great. But when you do this, right, when they're doing that, I'm like, that's great, you're practicing that. How many still balls do you hit in the game? No. So what exactly are you practicing? And so this is the thing that coaching science is actually about 2 decades ahead of how most people coach. And what the coaching science and the research shows is that small-sided games and randomized learning, right, are far more effective in making skills sticky than something like, hey, get 1,000 touches on the ball in the next 20 minutes. You are far better off, I love this definition, right? Technique in soccer, or some people call it skill, whatever you want to call it, is the execution of a decision. Technique is the execution of a decision. So I never play the same pass twice, right? Because my pass is how hard do I hit it? Where do I hit it? When do I hit it? Why do I hit it to him and not him? Where do I run after I hit it? And that never happens twice, maybe in a lifetime. So everything changes all the time. So we have to run practices and activities that are constantly changing. And so instead of trying to get 1,000 touches in practice, try to get kids to make 1,000 decisions. Which ball do I play? Where do I play? There's a time and a place for touches on the ball. Go home and get your touches on the ball. Pass it against the wall. Work on the physical part of your technique there. But the rest of it, the decisions and the actions that you do in practice, need to be a little more random. What the science shows is that if we have a pass back and forth here, we'll be successful 60 or 70% of the time with that technique. And this group that's playing 3v1 might only be successful 30% of the time. But 2 weeks later, when they test them again, the group that played 3v1 is going to be more successful at playing the game. Because they're actually making the decisions and the motions and the movements. So in your practices, the sooner you can add a defender, the sooner you can add a decision, the better your kids will learn. Hitting a ball to a cone and telling a kid pass it there and run to that cone, you've removed all decisions. And when you remove decisions, you might be teaching something, but you're not teaching soccer. What's Cruyff's quote? Like, you know, soccer's not juggling. Anyone who practices enough can juggle a ball 1,000 times. But that's not it. That's why Mr. Wu isn't a professional soccer player. Right? Because there's decisions and there's movement and there's all this stuff. And so becoming a better teacher for us in soccer, and I could spend an hour and a half talking just about this, but make better practices, make them look more like the games. The tough part is parents hate that. Parents love organization. They love, man, that line is moving, right? And look how straight those cones are. But honestly, playing 4v4 on a field this way and another 4v4 going across it and having all that chaos is more sticky and is more and creates more awareness and more decisions and more movements and where's the space and when's the space. So when we're teaching, especially with the academy age kids, they're so sensitive to learning these things. Get them in those random environments, get them in those small-sided game environments, and manipulate things so that you're playing games that forces them to make a lot of decisions. You're playing games that forces them to, if we're working on passing, great. If we're working on turning, great. Let's play games that force them to make lots of turns without me telling them, make this turn now. And that's how they'll learn better and will become stickier. And that's not me talking, that's actually the research talking, that's the coaching scientists talking. And there's actually a lot of pro clubs that don't do this. And it's not to say that the other part doesn't work, just doing it this way works better. And plus it's way more fun. Kids like playing games. And then never stop learning and practicing your craft. The scariest thing that a coach can ever say is, I don't need to learn anymore. I don't need to do anymore. I'm done learning. That's not the person that you want your kids with. It's not the person that you want working in your organization, because no one's ever done. My friend Bruce Brown was doing a talk for the National Basketball Coaches Meeting. He said he's given this talk, and sitting there in the front row, taking notes, was 91-year-old John Wooden. And he went up to him after, he's like, "You're John